Hey YouTube, what's going on? Abyssal Wave here, and today I'm going to be reviewing the Tomb of Sargeras melee trinkets. Now, I'm not going to be reviewing the tank trinkets or the range trinkets, just the melee DPS trinkets, and I'm going to give my opinion on how I think they will work for Frost and Unholy DKs, because that is my bread and butter. Those are my mains. So without further ado, let's get into it, and the first one we're going to be going over is the Spectre of Betrayal. I love this trinket. The use effect lasts a minute, yet it has a 45-second cooldown, which means there's windows where it does do double the damage, simply because you're going to have 2 apparitions up, or dread reflections up, and what happens is each of those reflections is going to do the torrent of magic, which means if you get that 15-second window where you can spawn another dread reflection, then you're going to get double the damage basically. And it is shadow damage, which means for Unholy DKs it's going to scale with their mastery. So let's test it out here. And we'll just attack it once. I don't have my keybind set up, but then we'll use Dread Reflection. As you can see, it does do quite a bit of damage. Look at that. 727k damage is not bad at all. And it is split among all enemies, among all nearby enemies. So single target, it'll do the same damage as a AoE setting. But the only difference is with AoE, you're with priority targets like that, it is really nice. However, it will do the same damage on single targets, so we'll just wait another 20 seconds for it to come back up. The thing about this trinket is I did get it Titan Forged and socketed. For some reason, for the vendor, sometimes they go Warforged or Titan Forged, so it's not the most accurate because this is obviously a higher item level than the other trinkets that I'm going to be testing. However, the effect is still basically the same. So as you can see, I have a Dread Reflection up. I use another one, another Dread Reflection spawns, and they both do their damage. As you can see, they both did their damage, and they do a lot of damage. So this is pretty nice. Obviously, of course, it is going to scale with the Unholy Mastery, which is super nice. That's so strong, and I really like that, giving Unholy some trinkets like that. There, however, are no trinkets that do frost damage in Tomb of Sargeras, which kind of sucks for Frost DKs just alike, but still, it is kind of nice to see those shadow trinkets. And the next one we're going to test is the Umbral Moonglaives. Now, the best thing I can compare this to, and I'm just going to put this on quickly. I'm still in combat for some reason. The best thing I can compare this to is Fury of the Illidari for Demon Hunters, where it does the brunt of its damage, and it does an explosion afterwards. And I'm going to test this on, I'll test it on an AoE setting here. It's not similar to Spectre of Betrayal, sorry about that. It's not similar to Spectre of Betrayal where the damage is split at all. It does do its same damage to all nearby enemies. However, it does the explosion at the end, which is really nice. So let's just test this when it comes up. I have my damage up. I'm just not going to do any other damage to not set that up. And as you can see, it does do a decent amount of AoE damage, which is kind of nice. I can see this being okay in Mythic Plus. That damage is pretty hefty. Look at that. That's 6 million damage to 3 targets. That is huge damage. And there are some fights in Tomb of Sargeras that have heavy AoE settings. So this trinket is super strong in AoE. And that's a normal version of the trinket as well. Obviously, Heroic and Mythic are going to do a lot more. And it is Arcane. So if there's anyone that scales off of Arcane, or you can do something similar to what the Warriors do, where they battle cry or something along those lines, or Rogues, where they use the shoulders in order to get 100% crit. This thing can just destroy AoE settings. That could, if all of them crit, could do 10 million plus damage with 1 on 3 targets, which is kind of nice. Very nice trinket. Kind of enjoy how it works. Personally, it doesn't look like it's going to be that strong for my class, though, because it doesn't have a primary stat on it. It just simply runs versatility, which kind of sucks, but at the same time, not too bad. So what we're going to do with the next trinket, Vial of Ceaseless Toxins, so we're going to test this on single target. So let me just go over to my own little training dummy here. And what this does is it does a brunt damage, and then it does a dot. So the thing about this trinket is it's very comparable to Might of Croesus, where with Might of Croesus, it had a reduced cooldown when you hit a certain amount of enemies with this. However, with this one, what it does is whenever you kill an enemy, it has a reduced cooldown, which means you're either going to have to time this correctly in order to get that reduced cooldown while still doing the majority of the damage, or you just kill it too fast so you get to use it again in 15 seconds. This trinket just doesn't look strong. Yeah, it has primary stats on it, which is kind of nice. However, it doesn't do enough damage to really be competitive. It does do shadow damage, which again means for Unholy DKs, yes, it'll scale with your mastery. It just doesn't look like it does enough damage to really have a spot on a top tier trinket list. I would feel more comfortable personally with the stat stick than this trinket. Next one we're going to be going over is Cradle of Anguish. Now, this trinket is difficult to test right now because with this trinket, I'm not going to be going below 50% health on a training dummy, which means I can't accurately test this and its potential. However, I can generally speak about this trinket, that this trinket will be incredible if you are good at mechanics. If you don't take a lot of damage, you get the effect of this trinket near all the time. If, however, you're getting, let's give a Nighthold example, if you're getting hit by any orb on Elisand, or your raid is taking too much damage on any fight, then you're at the mercy of whether you can do mechanics as a raid or not, because you're probably going to be losing this effect pretty decently, and you have to go above 80% in order to start stacking it up again. It's very comparable to how Chaos Talisman works. However, with the Chaos Talisman, it is less punishing than this. With the Chaos Talisman, you just have to keep attacking. You just have to keep your auto attacks up. With this, you actually have to stay above a certain amount of health. Again, that's very difficult because that's not something you can really control as a whole. If there's a raid that if there's a fight that has a lot of raid damage, it's very difficult to keep this up, which makes it a tough trinket to really judge right now. We're going to have to see how it pans out in Tomb of Sargeras. However, on farm, this trinket looks to be insane because you're not usually taking a lot of damage on farm when you outgear the content. The next one is Engine of Eradication. I like this trinket. I kind of like this trinket. Okay, I wasn't really sure where I was going to go off with that, but I like half of this trinket. I like this trinket in AoE settings because in AoE settings, this thing procs a lot. Let me just show right here. Let me move some of my abilities down, and I can give an accurate representation of what this thing does. This thing actually does a decent amount of damage. So, or gives you a decent amount of damage. So as you can see in an AoE setting, this thing is going to proc more often than not. So as you can see, I got a proc right there. Now I'm up to 20 seconds, and now I'm going to pop my cooldowns. And we're going to see if we can get another proc on heavy target fights. This thing procs a very decent amount of the time, which is kind of nice because it is a strong trinket when it does proc and when you have your stacks. However, when you drop your stacks, then you're in this limbo where you're just waiting for your stacks to come back up. So I'm just going to pop another cooldown there, see if we can get another proc. What I was finding with this on straight up single target is this thing didn't really proc a lot. It procced about twice a minute, which is not terrible because that's 40 seconds. But again, having something that's completely out of your control is really tough for especially a melee trinket, especially with classes like mine that have high burst potential. However, being at the mercy of whether you get a proc or not really sucks a lot of the time. So I'm very skeptical about this trinket. However, on AoE settings, it seems to proc a decent amount of the time, as long as you're doing a lot of attacks. With Unholy, this was procking a lot because you have your pets attacking as well, and you have a bunch of dots up. With Frost, it was procking about once to twice a minute, which again is just not that good. So I'm putting this trinket pretty low on the list just because I don't like trinkets where the chance on it or the damage on it is out of my control. The last one we're going to be testing is Infernal Cinders. Now, this trinket had a different effect before where it obviously applied a debuff onto the target, or had a chance to apply the debuff onto the target. And what that debuff would do is that debuff would basically just do more damage, or have the use effect do more damage, but you would share it across everyone that has the trinket. So anyone who procced that, Molten Armor, I think it was called, everyone would benefit from Molten Armor that had the trinket, which was pretty awesome. However, they removed that. I guess they realized it was too strong. It did sound very strong, but as you can see, I got a proc right there, and it was a crit, which is kind of nice. I'm probably not going to be able, well, obviously not going to be able to test the full effect of this trinket because it does require multiple people in your raid group, or each ally, which is basically in your raid group, in order to have the trinket to fully test it. So right now I'm not able to fully test the damage potential of this trinket. However, you can accurately tell, you would accurately be able to do the math for that and see how many people in your raid. If 5 people are using this trinket in your raid, you get a 50% increased crit damage on every time that this does damage, which is 100k fire damage. Of course, that scales with people that scale with fire damage. I don't think a lot of people scale with fire damage very well from melee. There's no class that's like, here's if there's fire damage, my mastery helps that or something like that. I think the only people that really benefit from this is Vengeance Demon Hunters, where they can actually heal from fire damage, which is really nice for them. However, I'm not talking about tanking trinkets. This might be something for them, but I'm just talking about DPS. 1 million damage, and how much damage total? 24 million is very, very low. That is incredibly low. That's 4% damage increase on a trinket that doesn't even have main stat on it. It just has crits. So this trinket isn't as good as I thought. However, if you have a lot of people using it, it does make it significantly better. That is all the DPS trinkets that are coming out in Tomb of Sargeras. Tell me what you guys think down in the description below. Do you think that any trinkets are underrated that I didn't discuss here? What do you guys think? Talk to me about it, and I will talk to you guys later. Have a good one.